Welcome to the Maternal Wealth Podcast, your space for all things maternal health, pregnancy, birth, and beyond. I am Stephanie Terrio, a labor and delivery nurse and a mother to 3 beautiful boys. Each week, we dive into inspiring stories and expert insights to remind us of your power in giving birth and motherhood. We're here to explore the joys, the challenges, and the complexities of maternal health. Because every mother's journey is unique and every story deserves to be told. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your healthcare provider for medical guidance tailored to your specific needs. Are you ready? Let's get into it. I'm excited for you to meet Agatha, a new mom fresh into her postpartum journey, only 4 months in. She talks about expectations, support, empowerment, and what happens when our birth doesn't go exactly as planned, and how we take that into our postpartum journey and beyond. Good morning. Welcome to the Maternal Wealth Podcast. This morning, I have invited Agatha, who is here with us.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Good. Very excited for this.
I'm excited to have you here. The idea of the podcast is for women, families, maternal health care providers to come together and have a real, genuine, authentic conversation about all things pertaining to birth. So we're going to have a conversation about her recent labor and delivery.
Very recent because my baby is 5 weeks old. So I'm very fresh in the topic. Her name is Lucy. She's 5 weeks old and 1 day. So we're still in the very newborn stage, in the newborn bubble, enjoying ourselves. So if you hear a baby crying, it's okay. She's just, a little demanding at the moment.
I would love to hear about how you found out that you were pregnant. Were you trying? Tell us about the story.
So yes, we were trying to get pregnant. I was kind of deciding about going back to school and starting a nursing school, actually.
Okay, nice.
And then I kind of decided that I don't want to keep putting the decision about having a kid for longer, because I knew that once I start school, I'll want to do my bachelor's and then my master's. And then I was thinking about doing midwifery. And I was like, if I have a child right now, then I will just keep putting the decision away. And my partner is a little older. So we kind of just mutually agreed that now it's the best time because I can still start school and I can do it, because I know that now I will do it regardless. But if I started without a child, I would be like, oh, okay, maybe another year, maybe I'll just get that degree and then I'll do this, So we kind of agreed that now it's the best time for us. So we started trying. It took a couple of months, but it wasn't very long process, although it was still very stressful. So I really feel for all the people that are trying for a very long time, because it's stressful. You're kind of, you're excited and you know that it might not happen at the first try, but then you're still kind of disappointed when it doesn't happen. So we got pregnant. We found out together. I was monitoring my cycle and I was like, okay, this is, I was just very excited about it all. And luckily we got pregnant and it went smoothly. We waited a little bit to tell our families. As soon as I found out, all my social media was about, all the videos about people having miscarriages and all of that. And I was a little afraid of that happening, because obviously that there's a high chance of that happening. So we waited a little bit to tell our families. But then once we did, everything went fine. And I had a very easy pregnancy. So I can't really, complain about that.
Did you have any symptoms of morning sickness?
I did, but it wasn't severe at all. There would be mornings that that like I would really feel kind of nasty, right? But I found out that if I eat something before even like leaving the bed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine. So my husband every night would like bring me nuts and bananas and whatever, something that like could stay overnight on my nightstand. And then the first time, like the first thing in the morning when I opened my eyes, I would just shove something in my mouth before even like being fully awake, and that really helped. So my husband's job was to just bring me snacks every night. So yeah, I didn't really have any like severe morning sickness. And then later on in pregnancy, I really felt great my whole pregnancy. I think that that was easy on me. I felt well. I obviously there were days that I felt a little tired, but it wasn't something that like I couldn't get up out of the couch or whatever, right? It was rather smooth. At the very end, I had a little heartburn the last 2 weeks of pregnancy. Times were my friends, but I had friends that were pregnant in the same time that I was, and they had severe nausea. And then from like 20 weeks on, they had like heartburn every single day. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky. Yeah. I'm so lucky that it's going like very easy for me.
It's interesting how women experience pregnancy so different.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I feel that my pregnancy was pretty smooth because I was really like focusing on my eating. So I was eating like insane amount of protein. And I think that that helped my body run well. But also, I know that my friends that had severe nausea, they couldn't eat anything. So like even if they tried eating more protein or anything, they just couldn't, right? I was all the time hungry, but I was hungry for protein. So like when I was like, okay, I need a little snack. So I was eating like Greek yogurts, like just insane amount of proteins. Like I had like this 2 months that I was eating eggs, and I could eat 2 dozen of eggs in a week. My husband, every time he would open the fridge and he would be like, where are all the eggs? And I'm like, we gotta run to the store. So I was eating insane amount of proteins. So I think that that also helped my body to like run well till the very end of the pregnancy.
So you're pregnant, and you mentioned earlier that you were thinking about midwifery. So I'm curious to hear with that, who did you decide to have as a birth provider? Did you go the OBGYN route or did you have a midwife?
So that was very complicated because I really wanted a midwife, and I really wanted either a home birth or a birth center. But my husband was terrified about home birth, and I was kind of like, I knew I could do it and I knew I would do well, but at the same time, you've never done that, right? So it's kind of like a totally new experience. You don't know what to expect. You don't know how you're actually going to handle the whole laboring process. I knew I could do it, but at the same time I was like, I don't know. So I really wanted to do a birth center, but then the one in Beverly is closed, and then the one in Cambridge is under construction for the last 2 years.
Right.
Like the closest birthing center was in New Hampshire, but they didn't take my insurance, so it was just a whole another problem. So I ended up with a hospital and OBGYN, because now that I think about it, I would probably do it a little differently with all the things that I know already. But I was, like I was looking for a hospital that had like a really low rate of C-sections and all of that. And then I didn't really feel comfortable with any of the hospitals. And I kind of went with a suggestion of my friend that's also pregnant. And that was previously, that's her second pregnancy. The first one, unfortunately, didn't, end up the way we wished for, and she had a bad experience with a hospital nearby, and I was like, okay, so maybe I shouldn't go with that route. And that's where my current OBGYN was, so I transferred to the same place that she was at, which was Winchester Hospital. And I had a great experience with like the hospital and all of that, but because I wanted an unmedicated birth, I wanted like a natural process of laboring and all of that, I think that right now I would be more focus on finding a midwife and skip the OBGYN.
It's hard when you're going into it for your first time and knowing how to navigate the healthcare system.
Yeah, and especially that, so I'm originally from Poland. I moved to the States 5 years ago. So, and I was 18 when I moved here. So I'm like navigating my adult life in a country that I don't really know, and the healthcare system is here so much different. So for example, like when I was comparing like my family and friends from Poland and the care that they were receiving, it's so much different from the OB care in the United States. So it was kind of, like I didn't have much to compare it to. It's all a process. But now that I know what I know, I think I would do it a little differently, and I would be more focused on finding a good midwife.
Right. It's about moving forward and learning from your
Yes,
experiences and,
absolutely.
and then sharing. And a part of what this podcast is for us to talk about our experiences. So our listeners can hear and then they can use your experience and the others who come forward to talk about it and they can have that information.
I think that's so important because when I was pregnant, I was looking for resources like that, right? Like you've never experienced anything like that in your life, so you don't know. You truly don't. And I think that the more we talk about it, the more we talk about women having different choices, because my goal was for a natural birth, but there are women who decide that C-section is their best option, or they decide that they want to do epidural from like right away, right? And it's totally fine, and everyone has a choice. But I think it's important to talk about those choices and talk about those experiences, because that's how we learn, that's how we know, right? So yeah, I think it's really great what you're doing here, so I'm
Thank
really
you.
excited.
I just want to put in for context, Agatha and I, we are located in the North Shore of Massachusetts. So we're about like 30, 35 minutes north of Boston. So in Beverly, there was a birth center that closed in 2022.
I think so, yeah.
There was a birth center located with Beverly Hospital, and unfortunately, it closed. And there was a lot of protests, and a lot of moms came out, and they were trying to keep it open, trying to find ways to open another birth center, but unfortunately, it didn't happen. So, in the works, as you mentioned earlier, in Cambridge, there is a community birth center that has been in the works. I don't know where they are in the process, but the community is trying to put it together.
Apparently they're supposed to open beginning of 2025.
Amazing.
So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that, because I think that birthing centers are such an important place, especially for women who opt for like low intervention unmedicated birth. Like that's so important, and I feel like we don't have that enough here.
Right. We don't. And losing the birth center, definitely the community felt the loss.
Absolutely. I talked to so many women, and they were heartbroken for that birthing center. For example, my friend recently had a baby. Our babies are a month apart, but that was her third child, and she had her previous kids in the birthing center, and she loved it, and she was so upset that it's not open anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a big loss for the whole community.
One of the positive aspects of the birth center that was located in Beverly is that it was located on the hospital grounds of Beverly Hospital. So if in the event that something needed extra attention, it was right across the street, the hospital. So
Yes.
the location wise was beneficial too for patients or mothers or pregnant people who wanted the birth center birth, but wanted to be close to a hospital.
Yeah, that was a perfect place for it.
All right, let's get back to you. I want to hear about your birth story. So you're pregnant, you had a good pregnancy, you decided to go to Winchester, you have an OBGYN, you're getting close to term.
I was very clear with my OB that I would like the natural process of the birth, and that I don't want to even talk about having an induction at 39 weeks. And she was really on board with that. So I was already 40 weeks, and then we had to schedule an ultrasound just to make sure that like there was enough fluids for the baby. We did at 40 weeks and 2 days. And unfortunately, my baby did not have enough waters, and I kind of knew what's that going to mean, and I was devastated. Like, being honest, I really was. I started to cry during the ultrasound, and I cried the whole appointment with my OB. My husband was like, didn't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because he knew that I really wanted an unmedicated birth, and like I kind of knew that with induction, that's pretty much not possible to happen. That like if they start giving me pitocin and all of that, I might not be able to just keep going with unmedicated birth. But at this point, they were kind of pushy with the induction because I was already over my due date. The baby had like low waters, so I kind of knew that I could protest and I could be like, no, let's like wait another few days. But I knew that at that point, there's no really point because she technically was ready, right?
Yeah.
So after the appointment, we got home, we took my suitcase and we went to the hospital. And I truly cried the entire way home and the
Oh.
entire way to the hospital. That was just not the experience that I wanted. And I was really disappointed. To be honest, I was really disappointed and really afraid of like how the process of induction is going to go. So I go to the hospital, I was admitted, I asked for them to check again the waters just to make sure that really we need that, because I was really just like hanging till the last second that maybe we don't need that induction.
So you had them check the water again, the fluid, and make sure
Yes.
there was enough. Oh, I like that. You had them double check.
Yeah, I was just like, please just check because I really don't want the induction. But unfortunately, that's what we did. And because I hope that my body will kind of get the, like we can trick my body and be like, okay, like it's time, and my body will actually start going by itself to labor, into labor. I didn't want any medication, so we did the Foley balloon, and now I know that I would never done that again. I had the Foley balloon for 5 hours, which possibly were the worst 5 hours of my birth.
I want to ask about the balloon.
Mm-hmm.
For the balloon, did they start with the balloon, or did you have a little bit of cervical ripening? Was there any kind of medication given to you before the balloon? How did that look?
So I was already about 1 centimeters dilated, which isn't much, but they said it was enough to like put the balloon in. And because I kind of requested the balloon,
Mm-hmm.
because I hope that like, okay, I will do the balloon and my body will be like, hey, like let's do it, right? Without any kind of medication. But unfortunately that didn't happen. And after 5 hours with the balloon, like my body was just not in labor.
Yeah.
My cervix started to open and I was 5 centimeters dilated at that point after like the balloon, but like that didn't do anything really. My body was just not progressing on its own. So actually my OB was at the hospital, so she kind of knew that I didn't want the all the interventions, all of that. So she took the balloon out and then she said that we can start on Pitocin or break my waters.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her to like give my body a little break and maybe like my body will naturally start going into labor. But unfortunately, after I think 2-3 hours, that didn't do anything. So they started me on Pitocin because I didn't want to break my waters. So we started on Pitocin, and again, I requested that they will do only one up, not the regular 2 up every 30 minutes, because I hoped again that if my body will get a little hint, like a little Pitocin, and like it will go into labor, which again didn't happen. So, but they started with like a very low dosage, and they didn't like up it as much as regular because I requested that that's what they would do, and they did. So they were very like okay with my decisions and they respected it. So I had a doula. The doula wasn't with me at the hospital at that point yet because I just told her that there's no really point for that. But my doula was kind of guiding me. I was obviously doing a lot of research before, but she was, like I just needed a little voice next to me being like, okay, maybe we could try this, maybe you could try that. So that's what we did, and that didn't help. They were putting the Pitocin up, and I had pretty regular contractions, but as soon as they would like lower the Pitocin or turn it off, like labor was just stalling. My body was not naturally in a labor. So we started an induction on Thursday, and then on Friday around 11 a.m., my body was not progressing. So they were like, okay, maybe we can break your waters and hope that that would help. So that's what we did. It didn't help. So around 2 p.m., my doula texted me and she's like, how are you dealing with the contractions? Is it time for me to come yet? And I was like, nah, I feel great. Like, I'm really doing well. The contractions are intense, but like, I'm really dealing with them well. And she goes, how high are you on Pitocin? And I'm like, I'm 16 already. And she goes, 60?
16, 1 6?
Yes.
Okay.
And she goes, "That's like you're pretty much maxed out in Pitocin." And I'm like, "Okay." And she goes, "Like you're really good with the contractions." I'm like, "They're like intense, but like I'm okay, I think." And she goes, "Okay, I'm coming." Because if someone doesn't know, you can technically go only up to 20, and
Mhm.
to go above that, you need like a special permit kind of, and you need two doctors to approve it or something like that. That's at least that's what they told me.
Generally, yes. Once you get to 20, then there's a team meeting. Everyone talks about risks and deciding whether going up is appropriate. Yes, but there are hospitals that will even go above 30.
Wow, I didn't know that. They told me that that's like very risky and they would not want me to go above 20, unless it's like absolutely, absolutely necessary. So technically, I was like at the almost at the maximum, which as soon as they stopped that, I was not in labor anymore. My doula came to the hospital around 3 p.m. and then at 5, like
Mhm.
she was like, "Okay, how about like we turn it off, we let you labor down for a little bit," because also they technically did not allow me to eat at that point. As soon as I started pitocin, I couldn't eat anymore, so that was already like 14, 15 hours of me not eating, which I was starving, exhausted.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is. So maybe I shouldn't say that on a podcast, but my husband was standing by the door and I was hiding behind my doula having a little bar because you need that energy. Like
Yes.
this is literally a marathon. And that was my second day in labor. And those contractions were pretty consistent. I just needed to eat a little bit.
I hear you. Yes.
So we labored down. My doula was like, maybe your body just needs a little break, and then we'll put you
Mhm.
back on pitocin, and we'll get that kick, and you'll do it. Which didn't happen. I had contractions for 10 hours every 2 minutes. So that was very intense. Really, the support during birth, it's the most important thing. If you have people around you that like are there for you no matter what, you really can do anything. You can do anything because I had those contractions for, yeah, I would say 10 hours every 2 minutes. I did not have any like pain medication, and I could do it. Like my doula was amazing. She was changing my positions. She was telling my husband, because obviously that was new for him too. And I told my doula from the very beginning that I would want her to be for both of us, because I wouldn't want to have like that experience that like after birth I would be like, you could help me with this or that. I wanted her to help my husband be there for me. And that's what she did. Honestly, she did such an amazing job. I will forever be thankful for her. She really helped me. She helped my husband. She helped us enjoy that experience better and more than we probably would if we were there alone.
I agree with what you're saying. When you have a good support system, when you have somebody who's at your side, and then the doula can give the partner a break, telling you can do this, you can do this, and have a strong
Yes,
support system, it makes such a difference.
absolutely. Like I really at that point I didn't really even think about getting any like pain management. Sorry, I did get pain management, but that was shower. I was in the shower, and I was kind of like on my force in the shower. The water was so soothing. If you have the option to go into the tap or in the shower during birth, do it. This is like the most amazing thing. As soon as that water was touching my skin, I was like 100% better.
I want to ask you, because you were saying that you're on the Pitocin and then in the shower. Did you have wireless monitoring when you
Yes.
were doing that? Okay.
Yes, I did. So the hospital had a bathtub that I used. I actually used the bathtub during the 5 hours that I had the balloon.
Okay.
And the tub was amazing. I absolutely loved it. We dimmed the lights. My husband was there with me. We put a little music on. The tap was just soothing. As soon as I got out of the tap, I felt like I'm falling apart. And then I got back into the tap and I was like, okay, I can do it. Like, I literally can do it.
Awesome. Okay.
And then, so the hospital had the wireless monitors. They didn't really work that great, to be honest. They used the Wi-Fi and then the Bluetooth, and sometimes like it didn't connect well, so the nurses had to like keep coming and fixing it and all of that. So it wasn't great, but at least that gave me the break and like I could like go for the 10 minutes into the shower or whatever. So yes, they did have that, and that was very important for me with the hospital births, that they had the wireless monitors in case of situation like this, because as soon as you get pitocin, they kind of have to monitor you all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they did have the wireless monitors, and I used the shower, and it was absolutely the best. Absolutely the best.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. They had that option.
It was a tiny little shower, but like I kind of like put my legs and back into the shower, and like my head was out of the shower on the ball, like on the big birthing ball, and like I was on my floors. It was amazing. Like the water helped me so much. If you're listening to this and you have that option, try that, because for me that was a game changer. But around, I would say, 2 a.m. on Saturday morning, I thought that I made such a huge progress, because my contractions became like really intense, like really, really intense. And I was maxed out on Pitocin, which obviously I think that was the reason why they were so intense, because I just had such a high dose of Pitocin. The OB came, we did our cervical check, and I told my doula, and I told her that I don't want to know how far I am, because the first time they checked me and I didn't progress at all, that was very, very, very discouraging to me. And I felt like I'm failing, and I just didn't want that disappointment again if that's what was happening. So I told my doula that I don't want to know anything. I would like her to go out with the doctor and see how far I am. And if I didn't progress at all, like a little reminder, that was already me being in labor for about 40 hours.
Yeah, that's a long time.
And I didn't sleep for all that since Thursday morning, right? And I didn't eat. So I was exhausted, truly. So I told her that if I didn't progress at all, which I knew that could be a possibility,
Mm-hmm.
I want the epidural. And if I am progressing and everything is going well, I am ready to do that, right? So if she could just ask for nitrous oxide, it was really getting intense.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like maybe I just need like a little kick,
Yeah.
like a little push.
Mm-hmm.
So she came back, and I saw from her face, she didn't say anything because she didn't want me to be discouraged, but I saw from her face that I didn't progress. And for the 15 hours that I was in labor, 10 hours of contractions every 2 minutes, I did not progress at all. So she asked for the epidural, and she came in and she was like, hey, so great news, you're getting the epidural. And I was like, because that was something that I tried to avoid at all costs. I really didn't want the epidural. It wasn't even about the poking my spine or anything, but like when I started to read about like the consequences of epidural to the baby and all of that, I just didn't want that. But at that point, I was in labor for so long that they were kind of like, we either like let your body relax, right? Or very soon we'll have to start about C-section, which again, like that's something that even more I wanted to avoid.
Yeah.
So we did the epidural.
We got the epidural. Okay.
Yep. And I was really disappointed. Like, honestly, I was really disappointed. I felt like, oh my gosh, like I was preparing so much. I put so much work into like preparing my mind, my body into this process, and then it didn't work. And I was truly, truly disappointed. And I had like a huge conversation during birth with my doula about it, because I was like, listen, like we did so much work, and like why isn't it working? And she's like this is not your fault. Like maybe you weren't fully ready to give birth yet, and like maybe your body's just not there, and it's okay. Like let's just do the epidural. You'll have some time to relax, maybe take a little nap, and maybe that will just be the trick for your body. And that's indeed what it was, because 3 hours later I was fully dilated.
Wow. Okay. 3 hours later after the epidural. Nice.
So about like hour and a half, 2 hours after the epidural, the nurses came in and they started to like, like, because I was sleeping, because like whole room was sleeping. My doula was sleeping. My husband was sleeping, because we were all just so exhausted. And they were fixing the monitor, because they were like, oh, we can't really feel like the heart rate for the baby and all of that. And I was like, oh, okay, because like I was really afraid of like something actually happening, like that the baby's heart rate might be dropping or mine.
Mm-hmm.
So like they were fixing it, and then they saw that there was a lot of blood coming out, and they were like, maybe we should call in the doctor just to see like what's going on. And there was a lot of blood because I was just progressing so well.
Mm-hmm. A bloody show.
Yeah, and I was like 8.5 centimeters dilated at that point. And then yeah, like the 3 hour mark, I was fully dilated. So it was around like, I would say, so maybe it was a little bit over 3 hours. Yeah, something around that. Ah, I don't remember exactly. Okay, sorry. But it was around that mark that I was fully dilated, and they were like, okay, so like if you feel like the urge, like if you feel a lot of pressure, like you can start pushing at that point because I was already fully dilated. And I was pushing for about hour and a half, which I guess is average for a first time mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was something, honestly.
Sometimes I have patients who can really feel the pressure, and sometimes I have patients who don't feel anything. How was it for you with epidural and pushing?
So it's very interesting because my mind was, I have an epidural, I won't feel anything. But then it was a reality check. That's the thing. Like, I don't think that the epidural wore out because I literally had it for what, 3-4 hours maybe at that point. But I felt a lot. And I felt a lot more than they told me technically should be feeling, because it was the same thing with the, how do you call it? The cater?
Oh, the catheter.
Yes, because you need it placed when you have epidural. And I felt that a lot. And they were like, you shouldn't really be feeling that with the epidural. And I was like, I can feel that. And I hate that. So I literally begged them. Like, as soon as I was fully dilated, I was like, please take it out. Like, I just cannot, this hurts me so much. Please take it out. And so then throughout the pushing, I guess I felt less than I would if I didn't have the epidural, but I still could feel a lot.
Did they take out the catheter before you started pushing?
Yes. So like I was technically pushing and I was like, please, like I was begging them to take it out. And they were like, yeah, we really want you to like have the baby very low. Like we can technically see the baby before we take it out, because if you're pushing for longer than an hour, we would have to place it again and that would be very unpleasant. And I was like, please, like I begged them. And they did take it out because it was so painful for me. I don't understand. They told me that it technically wouldn't, but I found it way more painful than the baby.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's just the epidural affects people differently and where they have areas where they can feel pain. So I'm glad that they took it out for you.
Oh yes, they did. And it was like, once that was out, that was like the best feeling ever.
I bet.
So yeah, they took it out and I was pushing for about an hour and a half, and I was around 7 a.m. was the shift change. I was really hoping that I would get a new doctor because the other one she was just not my vibe, honestly. Like, not a doctor that I would want for myself. And the shift happened and my baby was here at 7:20.
Okay, maybe your baby felt the same way.
Yeah, so it was like perfectly at the shift change. And actually the doctor that was there when my daughter was born was the same doctor that was admitting me to the hospital. And my nurse that was with me all night, and she knew about like all my preferences, she's like putting the gown on the doctor, she's explaining it to her, and she's like, so because I had very specific wants kind of like for when the baby's here, so like I didn't want the cord clamping at all, and then I wanted her to be obviously on my chest, and I didn't want them to like stimulate her unless it's like absolutely necessary, like after the minute or whatever, and she's just not responding. But that wasn't the case, so that was awesome. And she's like explaining, and she's putting that gown on her, and she's like, but she doesn't want cord clamping, and the doctor's like, I know. And the nurse was like, she wants like the dad to do this and do that, and she's like, I know, I read her birth plan. And she goes, no, but she wants also this and that. And she's like, I was admitting her, I went over that with her. Okay. So the doctor didn't even like have the time to change, because I guess like they pulled her out from the hallway and they were like, okay, you gotta be here.
Puts her coffee down.
Like literally she just came in with her bag with her little coffee, she put her all on the side, they put the gown on her and all of that. And yeah, that was pretty much the experience. She was great. So they told us that like technically there won't be many nurses in the room with us when I'm giving birth, unless like something's going wrong, right? And then like right before she was born, there was like a rush of people, and there were at least like 10 nurses in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see in my husband's face, he like went blank and he was like, oh my gosh, something's happening, because they told us that's not going to happen unless something's happening, right?
Yeah.
And I had like one nurse right like on my face. There was just a bunch of people there, and like he was terrified. He was like, after the birth, he was like, yeah, I thought that like something's either happening to you or the baby, because like obviously they weren't saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then of course that we had so many nurses only because there was a shift change, and there was like basically double nurses for everything, because there were the ones from the night shift and the one from the morning shift, and they kind of like had to overlap, so they were all in my room. But it wasn't anything wrong, we just, because it was the shift change, that's why there was so many people there. But I had one nurse like directly in my face. She was so funny. Like now that I think about it, because I was like, at the end, like the baby's almost here, and you're like, I just can't do it anymore. Like I just cannot. And I was like, just cut me open. I just can't do it. And that nurse was like over my face, and she was like, it's not like you can or cannot do it. You're doing it right now. And that was like kind of like the last pushes. And then like obviously they were saying like, oh my gosh, she's almost here. I can see her head. And I just look at my husband. I look at the doctor, and I'm like, you liars. You've been saying that for the last 10 pushes. And I like, she did it. And like, you know what? I know that like that's not for everyone, but I touched like the head when it was coming out, and I was like, okay, she's here. Like she's actually here. Like I have so little work to do right now. Like I already did so much. Like that was a very long 3 days, and she's almost here. So I touched that head, and I was like I can do it. And like, oh my gosh, that was another thing. Like the head was like halfway out, and I didn't have another contraction for 5 minutes.
Of course.
That was the longest 5 minutes of my life.
I
And
bet.
like,
I bet.
and the nurses was like, no, you're fine. Like, that's normal. Like, just try to like breathe through it. You're doing great, all of that. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, is there anything else that will like go off from what I wanted? But after those very, very long 5 minutes, the rest of the head came out, and basically the body just flew out. Women said that like you forget it. Like you see that head, and you're like, oh my God, she's here. Like nothing else matters. And then like I looked at my husband, he was crying. Like that was just such a beautiful moment. And another thing, I asked my doula, obviously I forgot about it. I asked my doula on one of our visits, like halfway through pregnancy, and I was like, can you please take pictures? Like take pictures. And obviously these are not pictures that like you're going to show people, right? But like now that I go back to it, and I can like see my husband's face like when she's coming out, and like I see myself with her the first like few minutes of her life, really, like that's so beautiful. I highly recommend this to everyone, because sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, how did I do it? And then you go back to those pictures, and like you see it, like that baby is there. I'm so glad I have those pictures, because like these are just like, they're just so beautiful to go back to. I'm so glad that she did. I obviously didn't, like, you don't think when like you're in this process, you don't really think that much.
Right. You get caught up in everything.
Absolutely. Guys, get the doula. Like doula is something that you need. And she took those pictures, like she just took my phone, took those pictures, and then like a few hours later after like birth, I was going through my pictures, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have all those pictures. Like I have a video of my husband cutting the cord, and it's just so beautiful, honestly. Just so glad I have that.
That's really nice. Sometimes patients might think that the nurses or the doctors are able to do that and take those pictures in the moment. We can do it afterwards, but in the moment, there's so many things that we're doing with our hands. And that's why having a doula or somebody like another family member or friend.
Yes, because your husband's there for you too. Like you're like, my husband was just like right there next to me, right? Being at the moment with me. So like he didn't think about that either. Like he was just like, oh my gosh, it's like the baby's here.
Yeah, you don't want him behind the screen. You want him like in it.
Yes, absolutely. So that was really, wow. Those pictures are probably one of the most beautiful ones I have. It's like so special to like, like us seeing her for the first time, and just like, oh, really special, really special.
And you will cherish those photos forever.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Like just like now thinking about it, it just makes me like so happy. If you want a photographer or have a doula take them, or have a mom take them, because my mom is in Poland, so she couldn't be there like with me during birth. But like if you have a mom that you want during birth, like just ask them to take those pictures. Like you will cherish them forever, really.
That's great advice. I love that.
Yeah, so she was here. I really couldn't believe that, like, this is my baby. And like I did it, you know?
Talk about those first moments with her on your chest and doing skin to skin and just smelling her.
The words can explain that. Like I always knew I wanted to be a mom. Even when I was a teenager, like I always knew that this is something that I want in life. I always wanted to be a mom. Always wanted to have a big family. So like the second they put her on my chest, I was like, oh my gosh, she's actually mine. Like that's it. Like I looked at my husband and he looked at me like all with like the tears in his eyes, and like that was that's just so beautiful. And like you really can explain that feeling. I'm speechless when I think about that, because that was very, very special. And they put her on my chest and they honored like my wishes. They didn't like stimulate her. She pretty much immediately cried after she was born, so that wasn't even an issue. They just covered her with few warm blankets and she was on my chest. Like I smelled her little tiny head and looked into those tiny little eyes. And that was just so beautiful. So yeah, that was really special. I really can explain that. And you know that that's the same person that was in your belly, but you kind of like, how did that all happen? Like honestly, she was there, she's here now. Like wow, like my body did such an amazing work, you know? Like when you think about that, how your body can create a baby. My body did all that work, didn't take any like thinking work from me, right? Like I didn't have to sit down and like put the pieces together. That's not a thing. Like your body is just designed so amazingly to do all that work. Every time I think about it, I'm mind blown.
When you really sit down and you think about the whole process from the beginning to the end, and the end product being a live human being, this adorable, cute, snuggly little baby.
You like know the biological part of that, right? Like you know how it happens. When you think about that and your body created, you created that person. Like I'm speechless. My body did all that work and she's here and she's perfect.
I want to ask you,
Yes.
going over your story and how you had expectations about how your birth would go and how labor would go and the end product, what advice would you give to women who are in the similar situation where they're pregnant now and they have an idea how they want their birth to go? And then also for women who are where you are postpartum and the experience wasn't what they had hoped for or planned for, what advice would you give them now?
I think it's okay to be disappointed, because I truly was so disappointed with my birth. That was nothing I planned for. I didn't want any of those interventions. I actually had that conversation with my husband the other day. I really feel upset about this. And I think that's okay. You know, of course, it's very important that you and the baby are healthy and that you're doing fine and well. And that's absolutely important, right? But I understand, I kind of felt upset that people didn't really understand where I'm coming from. And they were just telling me, oh, but you and the baby are fine. So, like, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Like, it matters. It matters to me. This is really big part of me right now, you know, like all the things that I went through. And that's okay to be disappointed. And that's okay to have, you know, not that great of a feelings about it. You should be validated for that, because this is like your body did that. You had to go through that process. It's okay to be disappointed that you ended up having a scheduled C-section, or it's okay to be disappointed that you're in labor for 3 days, not like 10 hours as you imagine. And it's okay. Like this is part of you and no one can tell you how to feel about it. You did an amazing work, and it's very important to remember that you did all of this. No one else done that for you. You created a person and you're doing great. And it's okay to not have warm feelings about your birth experience, because I truly am not feeling great about my birthing experience. And maybe with time, that will change and I'll be like, okay, like we needed to do what we needed to do. But yes, I am disappointed because that's nothing I wanted. That's nothing I expected. I cried most of my birth about that because that was nothing I wanted. And my doula was there for me and she was like, I know that this is not what you wanted, but this is what we have to do at the moment. And we don't really have any other choice. Unfortunately, that was the reality. So yeah, it's okay. You have the right to be upset and not to feel great about it. And that's okay.
I really appreciate you being honest and open and sharing that because I think a lot of women feel the same way and validating the fact that it's okay to be disappointed. Even with the outcome of a healthy baby, a healthy mom, it's okay to recognize that and validate those feelings.
That's really important because I think that other women also do this to us, right? They just tell us, oh, it's fine. Like, oh, it wasn't that bad for you. I had it worse. Maybe you did. Maybe you truly did. But it doesn't matter. Like this woman doesn't feel great about it, right? So like, how about we say something nice? How about we just say, I'm so sorry that it didn't go as planned. Do you think there's something that you can do better or for the next time? As women, like, let's not do this to each other, right? Like, let's just be kind. Let's just be there for each other. Like, just say something nice.
I agree. Lift each other up because we all experience birth and pregnancy and delivery in a different way. And it's okay to feel how we feel and listen and just lift each other up, support each other because we all want the same thing, right? We all go into
Yes.
this and we all want people to be happy. We all want to support mothers. I think what you're saying is great and to have that conversation, right? And give the space for other women who might feel the same way to let them know others feel just like you do.
You have every right to feel that way. That's the message.
I have one last question for you.
Yes.
Think about 20, 30 years from now when Lucy's older and maybe she's pregnant and she's about to give birth. What message would you want her to hear from you about her delivery?
Oh gosh. I've heard that once from a midwife saying that the birth of the child kind of gives you the idea of what you will need to raise that child. That the birth is like kind of like the start. The birth is giving you how the raising will go. And I think what her birth taught me is to be patient, to have expectations, but know that everything might change, that I cannot control everything, even though I want to, and to kind of let it go. I think that's all her birth taught me, and that the end result is just precious.
That's beautiful.
I hope that she will have easier birth than I did. That's a big one.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, to share your story, to share your message. It was very delightful.
Thank you so much for having me here because I think this is so special and this is so important for other women to hear those stories, to know that you can do it. Like, you're absolutely can do it, because I know that many women think, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'll deal with the pain. I don't know how I will do it all. And the truth is, you can do it. Like, your body is so amazing. You're so amazing. You did all that work already. Like, you absolutely can do it. Just hear other women, feel empowered by those stories. Good luck, honestly. Good luck to everyone.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. And maybe we'll chat again soon sometime with baby number 2.
I'll come back here in 2 years.
Okay. Enjoy your Sunday and thank you again.
Thank you, Stephanie. Have a great day.